Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 2 of My Dress Up Darling. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So we're sort of picking up from that little cliffhanger at the very end. As it would turn out, the character Marin wants to cosplay from appears to be from an eroji game. Which is to say, fairly adult. So I guess it makes sense that Gojo, being the type of person who only ever practices making Hina dolls, he doesn't really know anything about what Marin's talking about. Marin's describing things in a way that I understand, being a watcher of anime, but I feel for Gojo in the sense that, boy, I really wouldn't want to try explaining this to, an uninitiated coworker or something. I like how the plot is that the main character is forced to join a humiliation club, whatever the hell that means. That sounds like a nightmare scenario. Now, I find it interesting that Gojo sort of, comes around to the idea that maybe she's just pulling his leg, but it's pretty clear that she's serious. So I find it interesting that Marin is essentially invested in this eroji because of the development of one character. I don't know, that seems a bit kind of out there. It's not like stuff like that never happens, but it seems like that kind of behavior is really just sort of out there. And even more out there is the fact that, I don't know, Shizuku-tan, the character here, she seems to be... I don't know the term, I guess, but the person who's being humiliated in the club, it would seem. Ah, man, Gojo. You're asking questions you don't really want to know the answers to here. Yes, the game is age restricted. Yes, I'm underage, but yes, I still play it anyways. He 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 he. I like how they put a little disclaimer there saying that, despite Marin saying everyone does this stuff, maybe not everyone actually does this stuff. Don't get your hopes up, guys. It's nice how sincere Gojo is about all this, because, he's essentially found somebody who has a verboten hobby like his, so to meet someone else who's so sincere is nice. He can finally, I guess, kind of be himself. He can be sincere without fear of reprisal. So this is where things get really tricky. The first order of business, in order to make clothing, is that Gojo's gonna have to take some measurements. And I remember what it was like being in high school. I'd imagine taking the measurements of a peer would be, I don't know, catastrophic for maintaining a calm demeanor. Definitely don't think I'd be capable of something like that. So I get the feeling that Gojo's grandfather is gonna, I don't know, maybe be an obstacle here, because he's already seeming to notice Gojo's unusual behavior of going to bed early. Presumably he's going to bed so he can read up on that book and the eroge and all that stuff. I think it's just sort of sinking in how exactly the situation is going to evolve. Presumably he read something about exactly what measurements you need and how sensitive that might be. So Marin seems to have taken a bit of initiative to find out where Gojo lives. That's a little unnerving. So at least she has the good grace to, bring a gift to mollify Gojo for sort of finding out where he lives and showing up uninvited. Now I know there's sort of this common trope about inviting people into your room being this big embarrassing thing and nobody really wants to do it, but, considering his room isn't a mess, it doesn't seem like too big a deal, At least not to me. It's probably a cultural thing, really. So it already begins. Gojo's immediately freaking out, and I guess given the context, I can't really blame him. I don't think the situation is helped by Marin being deliberately vague about what precisely she wants to do. Of course, being precise, meaning taking measurements and all that, that's a fairly intimate thing. I think it's a mark in his favor that Gojo's kind of reticent about doing this whole thing, especially because it really seems like an intimate thing. So I think I know where things are already going with this. There's going to be some kind of mishap. Obviously she has to strip down to be measured, but I swear, Gojo's grandfather's gonna walk in and be like, what the Sam Hill's going on here? And things are gonna get even more awkward. So I vaguely remember some sort of kerfuffle when this episode first came out, where there was essentially some censorship of a couple scenes where they basically blurred out Marin in her bathing suit here, and the intended effect was, this bathing suit is too skimpy, so we will obscure it, but in practical terms, the effect made it look like she was just, out and out naked. And really, the censorship just made it worse. Because, yeah, this is kind of risque, but it's not as bad as it certainly could have been. At least not so far. I mean, it doesn't help that between the soundtrack and the way Gojo's trembling, that there's this palpable air of tension and almost horror. Oh, man. She said, I'm gonna close my eyes to make this easier, but then I'm going to suddenly open them. It just flew across the room. Ultimately there's no winning here. Either he's gonna be staring at some part of her or another. There's just no getting around this. I can also see another way that this goes horribly wrong, in that every part of the bathing suit is held by, two strings tied together. I feel like it wouldn't take very much for one of those to get pulled and for part of it to fall off. Coincidentally, just in time for Gojo's grandfather to walk in. So Gojo's finally taking this, I guess, a bit more seriously, in the sense that, he's doing this for the sake of someone else, and that getting hung up on everything will only cause friction. I'm surprised he's maintaining his composure, honestly. Getting, the waist and the diameter of the upper thigh and all that. Or not the diameter, the circumference, rather. I would think, personally, that would be intimate enough to start to cause friction, even in spite of his determination to keep things as platonic as possible. There's something here in this dynamic about the hysteria of Gojo and the way Marin is just calm and unflinching in the face of everything. Alright, I think this is the scene that fell victim to the censorship. That was the one that looked especially risky. And you gotta feel a little bit sorry for him, because he's clearly suffering under this whole thing. But at the same time, you'd imagine a lot of his peers would kill for this opportunity. So it's a shame for Gojo, considering his concentration has been broken, now that he has to measure her bust. That's the most intimate of all, one would imagine. Personally, I don't know much about taking body measurements. Man, I feel like the animators were having fun here animating all the jiggling. That was something somebody put a lot of passion and effort into. Ooh, careful there, Gojo. Don't get too eager. Man, I feel like Gojo would be having an easier time doing this if he just, imagine taking a cold shower or something. I don't think he necessarily has to hold the tape measure there to read the length. Surely you could just sort of, hold your thumb where the circumference is and then remove the tape measure and read it that way. You don't have to be staring right down her tits in order to read the measurement. Uh-oh. She just upped the ante. She wants to measure her inseam and bust point. Inseam, of course, refers to the length of the inner thigh. Or something like that. It's the inside of the leg here, which, I would think Gojo would want her to hold the more intimate end of the tape measure there. That might be a little bit much for a first date. Feel bad for him. She's just teasing now. I guess to make things easier, she deigns to take care of the bust point herself. Oh boy. I feel like she made the mistake of telling him the length directly. He's imagining that for sure. That's gonna live in his head rent-free. Poor guy. Alright, so this is it. This is where the rubber really meets the road. He's going to measure the inseam, and something unforeseen is going to occur here. Ooh. I don't know if he nudged her or something, but... oh boy. Finally she's on the back foot now and embarrassed. And I guess reasonably so. Fortunately, Gojo is rather unaware as to why she might be uncomfortable. You know, surely it must just be the heat. Ha ha ha. Okay, so I guess nothing really happened. Nothing awkward and unexpected. I guess other than Gojo specifically requesting the Orojis to play through them and get reference material. Ah boy, here she goes. You need to play both of them to truly understand all the deep lore. Ah boy, You know what? I take it back. I think this is where things are gonna get bad. Like, he's gonna be playing this Hiroji and somebody's gonna walk in. And it's going to be something insanely weird. Oh boy. Oh man, he's just playing it stone-faced. And he's just talking to his grandfather like he's not playing a porn game. Oh, man. I mean, points to his grandfather for not making things more awkward, but on the other hand, Gojo, God, you're taking notes? It's not a good look, dude. Alright, that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.